Hello, my name is Bill Browder, and I'm very honored and pleased to be addressing the Gathering 2024. This is my second opportunity to address the Gathering, and I view it as one of the most important political, socioeconomic discussions that take place in South Africa. So it's a great honor for me to be here. For those of you who don't know me, I have been a major, longtime critic of Vladimir Putin. It all started when Putin and his regime murdered my lawyer, Sergei Magnitsky, in Russian police custody. Sergei had uncovered and exposed a $230 million Russian government corruption scheme. In retaliation, he was arrested, tortured for 358 days, and killed at the age of 37 on November 16, 2009. Since his murder, I've taken up his cause to fight for justice, and that cause led to something which has turned out to be far bigger than anything I could have ever imagined. What I discovered was that there was no possibility of getting justice inside of Russia for his murder, and so I said, how do we get justice outside of Russia? And as I looked at what existed in the world, what kind of justice mechanisms existed, I discovered that none existed. That if a person is murdered or tortured in a country that doesn't have a rule of law, then there's basically nothing you can do. And so I said to myself, that's just unreasonable. I can't live in a world like that. And so I came up with an idea, which is that the people who killed Sergei Magnitsky killed him for $230 million. And the people who get that money don't keep the money in Russia. They keep that money elsewhere, in attractive places. In the south of France, they buy properties. In Aspen, they get ski chalets. And all sorts of things like that. And so then I said to myself, well, we may not be able to prosecute them for torture and murder in America or in France or in the UK, but we can absolutely freeze those assets that they have in the West, and we can prevent their travel. And that idea became known as the Magnitsky Act. And the Magnitsky Act was I first advocated for it in the United States. And at the time, there was really no resistance at all. And the Magnitsky Act passed the Senate 92-4. And in November of 2012, it passed the House of Representatives with 89%. And on December 14, 2012, the Magnitsky Act became a federal law in the United States. Putin went out of his mind. Putin retaliated by banning the adoption of Russian orphans by American families. He made it his single largest foreign policy priority to repeal the Magnitsky Act. And then he started going after me with death threats, kidnapping threats. I've been the subject of 8 Interpol arrest warrants, extradition requests from the UK where I live. They made lawsuits and movies and every possible thing they could do to try to destroy me in retaliation for the Magnitsky Act. As they were retaliating, some of my backers in the United States, some senators and members of the House of Representatives, said to themselves, well, if Putin is so mad about this, there's probably a lot of other dictators and bad guys that would be mad too. And that led to something called the Global Magnitsky Act. And the Global Magnitsky Act passed in the US in 2016. The Global Magnitsky Act says that it doesn't just sanction Putin and his cronies, but it sanctions Iranian mullahs, generals from Myanmar who are responsible for the Rohingya genocide, Chinese officials who are setting up the Uyghur concentration camps, and so many other people in these categories, and it became a global piece of legislation. After the US passed the Magnitsky Act, Canada passed their Magnitsky Act in 2017, a global Magnitsky Act. The UK passed their version in 2018. In 2020, the EU passed a Magnitsky Act. In 2021, the Australians passed a Magnitsky Act. In between all this, Iceland passed a Magnitsky Act, Norway passed a Magnitsky Act, Montenegro passed a Magnitsky Act. And I don't want to leave out all of the Channel Islands, Guernsey, Jersey, Isle of Man, Gibraltar, the Cayman Islands, the British Virgin Islands all have Magnitsky Acts. And so why am I telling you this whole story? I'm telling you this whole story because you're all sitting in South Africa. And South Africa doesn't have a Magnitsky Act. And that's odd. South Africa prides itself on being a country with an independent judiciary, a country with an established rule of law. But anybody who's on any of these Magnitsky lists in the rest of the world can freely travel to South Africa. They can go on vacation in Cape Town. They can keep their money in South African banks. And it seems like that shouldn't be the case. And so I understand that there's an election coming up in South Africa. I understand that there are political candidates and other people politically connected in the audience today. And so my message to you, my main message to you, is that South Africa should have a Magnitsky Act, and it should be called a Magnitsky Act. Now, I know that there are some people in the South African government that are chummy with Putin and with Russia. And Putin probably wouldn't be happy if South Africa has a Magnitsky Act. But I also don't think that people in South African government should be chummy with Putin. I think that that's a shame, a shameful political position. And so my hope is that that chumminess, that friendliness stops, and that the politicians who are sitting here today will push forward on something which will be good for South Africa, bad for Russia, and of course bad for other corrupt kleptocrats and dictators from around the world. It's my great honor that I have an opportunity to share this thought with you, and I hope you'll take this away and think about it and do something about it. And I thank you again for the time and the attention.